You know, video games are much more than mere visual entertainment. It is a beauteous experience which bestows its consolatory nature upon the user with grace and blitheness. It brings onto you the feeling of serenity while feeding your mind with endless possibilities of creating your own worlds. Worlds that enlighten and inspire others to do the same, to reach deep within themselves to find their full potential in becoming their own main characters, to overcome the perils that try to sway our journeys and impede our character growth, to rescue the princess whenever she's in another castle. Yes. Video games are much more than just trivial toys. They are fundamental in teaching us that we as humans have a gift for creating beyond the boundaries of imagination, and that whatever we can think of will be turned to reality. Imagination will often carry us to worlds that never were, but without it, we go nowhere. So this is my ode to the developers and great minds that inspire me to keep on progressing on to the next checkpoint. This one is for you, for the players. In this video, I want to briefly talk about the lost art of arcade games. It's quite sad that where I live in, we don't have them anymore. They've all been replaced by mediums such as mobile games and the fact that console gaming has become so much more accessible in the past years. But for all the modern advancements the gaming industry has achieved, I want to visit the sweet period of walking into an arcade shop and being greeted by the sounds of 8-bit special effects rattling throughout the entirety of the store. The experience you get from visiting an arcade shop is unlike anything else in gaming, and for 7-year-old me, it was like being transported into the world of Ready Player One. So let's quickly visit some of the titles that stood out to me the most, starting with the gore classic, House of the Dead 2. Now this right here was the biggest pimp in the entirety of the shop. Everyone turned into Chris Redfield as soon as they picked up those now iconic red and blue Ultra Desert Eagle looking motherfuckers. Developed by Sega as a first-person light gun shooter set in a zombie apocalypse, the story is about yada 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 blah 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 ya ya ya. Look, you don't need to know any of this, because the story sucks ass. You don't play arcade games to get emotionally invested in its world building, you sicko. It's a fucking arcade shooter in which you walk up to a bulky machine in a noisy environment, and the controller is a literal depiction of a handgun, bigger than your upper torso, that you use to point at the screen and pretend you're John Rambo taking on the entire army of the dead by yourself. That's it. In fact, that's most of the games I'll be showcasing in this video, so I don't have to try hard at making a video like the last one that got copyright claimed by Universal Studios. Fuck you! I work hard to make that video be somewhat tolerable to watch. Anyway, the things that I can remember about the story is that you're some dude running around Italy while it's being infested with zombies, and you have to go and kill this dude named Goldman. But before you reach him, you have to fight several badass-looking bosses, which, to be honest, are the highlight of this game. Now, this game was the go-to game whenever you went to the shop. It was a violent, unrelenting, money-hungry experience, as is the case with every single one of these damn machines. But I would still waste all my quarters of this game just to see if I could reach the magician and see this gutter snipe jump off the building and split like a rotten tomato. But unfortunately, I never did. Now, the design of the game is a big standout aspect of it. The game has a surreal and truly despondent city design. Everything looks so depressing, with a heavy presence of evil embedding its overall atmosphere. But it is an arcade game, so you don't really have time to dwell on the technical aspects of it, as the game just fucking blasts like a roller coaster and turns you into a trigger-happy American police officer. You shoot anything that moves, you know what I mean? And because of its high-speed gameplay design, the game truly has a lot of replayability. Now, even though there ain't a whole lot of substance to this game, the zombie designs are another aspect that I found quite awesome indeed. You have your standard affair of brainless undead jerkwads, but then you have dual-wielding, heavy metal-looking motherfuckers, calcified mummy zombies, these Jason Voorhees dog-ape-looking cunts, penis slugs, Grandpa Lou Pickles-looking type zombies, Dark Souls, fat undead BDSM executioner Danny Dom zombies, and a whole heap of other zombies. And fun fact, they all have names. I actually didn't know that, but let me present to you all
Steve, David, Peter, Max, Cecil, Ryan, Johnny, Patrick, Ricky, Bob, Randy, Franklin, Mickey, Lance, Everton, Ken, and Keith. The gang's all here. And we can't finish talking about this game without acknowledging the cool boss designs. All the bosses are genuinely iconic, at least in my eyes. The first time I encountered the Judgment boss, I was left with such a strong first impression. His design is rather dastardly. You defeat this guy not by targeting his body, but by shooting his annoying skeleton demon minion that's somehow intertwined with him. This is where the game's unfairness comes into play, however, as you start to realize that you need superhuman pinpoint accuracy in order to hit the skeleton demon in as many frames as humanly possible. Another sick boss is the Hierophant. I always described him as Aquaman if he was ever infected with the T-virus. His only known weakness is shooting him in the chest, as it's the only part of his body that isn't totally covered by his exoskeleton. But as usual, you need that superhuman pinpoint accuracy in order to defeat him without wasting all your coins. The Tower is a fucked up mutant Hydra abomination that still freaks me out to this day, but also probably one of the easiest bosses to defeat. But if you really, really want to shit your pants, go and face off against the one and only Strength. This one is pure nightmare fuel. A fast, chainsaw-wielding behemoth that chases you through a maze set in a rundown coliseum. This part of the game feels like a bad fever dream. However, it's perfectly executed. You're constantly in the edge of your seat, tensed up and fully on guard to evade any and all of his surprise attacks. This part of the game is a sure highlight. You know, it's a shame that this franchise never turned into a fully fleshed out third-person action/horror game because it's so imaginative, so inventive. The House of the Dead franchise is something that I wish some AAA developer acquired the rights to and revived to be consumed by modern gaming audiences. But until that time comes, I'll keep on dreaming. And I'll continue to sleep well knowing that this one's one of the games that shaped my childhood for the better. House of the Dead 2 might have been the coolest zombie on real shooter game, but Time Crisis Crisis Zone and Time Crisis 2 were pure 90s testosterone-fueled action games that would often be in the center of my wettest dreams. Developed by Namco, this on-rail shooter features some of the most highly packed action in all of arcade history. Like in the previous segment, I'm going to skip past the story because they're not really important to the overall experience. The plot, if you want to call it that, are nothing but placeholders to pad out the runtime of the game, but they ultimately fall flat because they're not fully formed ideas. These games, however, are high-octane action experiences that, oddly enough, don't get mimicked often. Maybe it's because you can only achieve this type of action in a condensed scripted format, who knows. There's not really a lot to talk about these games other than the fact that I just love them, but all these titles follow the same formula. Shoot, cover, shoot. Yeah, it doesn't sound fun, but check this out. It's a gameplay that hooks you in and makes you want to give the machine all of your tokens. I think one of the titles that left a powerful, everlasting impression on me was definitely Metal Slug 3. Developed by SNK, this 2D pixel art side-scroller captivated me from the get-go. The pixel art of this game is wonderful. It gives me a warm feeling in my stomach every time I play it. It's like eating a piece of blueberry pie baked by Grandma herself. This was actually the first time I experienced a game with non-linear gameplay elements. Knowing that you can either choose to go up here to continue on to the swap bay, or go down here to traverse a dangerous underwater section blew my mind like Metal Slug 3 is such a gold standard because it demonstrates that sprite art could be done in such a way to convey the character's charisma and presence in such a fun way. The action is gripping and challenging without it making you learn a complex list of combos to give you an edge in battle. It's a wonderful title that's easily accessible to anyone who desires to play it, and it truly made me become more highly imaginative as well. You know, throughout the making of this video, I found it somewhat of a challenge to talk about these games as individual works because they all share the same commonality of being simplistic time sinks. Arcade games lack all the aspects of a modern title: storytelling, character development, voice acting, etc. But does that mean that they're inferior to what we have now? Does it mean that gamers back then had it worse than what we do now?
No.
Absolutely not. You see, I chose to make this video to share my unconditional love for arcade games and what they did for the industry. I want to make this video to acknowledge a company like Atari, for example, a group of pioneers that revolutionized the entire world. They'll always be recognized as the forefathers of gaming. Games like Pong, Tetris, Asteroids, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Dig Dug, Cuber, Galaga, Centipede, just to name a few out of their whole catalog. This company turned so many kids into longtime gaming fanatics. Without their willingness to venture off into the virtual realm, who knows what gaming could have been without their input. I would imagine that without them, we would have never had gotten companies like Capcom, which not only gave us a slew of awesome side-scrollers and bullet hell games such as Ghosts and Goblins, 1942, Pro Gear, and Strider, but an entirely new experience with the addition of fighting titles. Now, technically the first ever fighting arcade title was Heavyweight Champ, released back in 1976, but this is better.
Strike y'all in Street Fighter 3.
Damn! Titles such as Street Fighter that encourage players to up their techniques through its established fast-paced tag team style gameplay, or the glorious Marvel vs. Capcom titles with its similar style of play, paved the way for fighting games as we know them today. The arcade community shifted dramatically with the introduction of these franchises. Titles like Mortal Kombat, Virtua Fighter, The King of Fighters, SNK vs. Capcom also helped to further expand the experience with their own visual aesthetics and gameplay mechanics. I remember walking into a packed arcade shop and witnessing people lose their minds in excitement as players duel to the death by mashing buttons in lightning speed fashion. The experience was electrifying and eye-opening. The tangible energy that was present wasn't like anything else I've experienced at the time, and frankly I haven't had a similar experience since. Now, fighting games aren't my forte, but I always enjoyed watching a good match between professional fighting players duke it out and trash-talk each other in person. And I also need to talk about these particular games in this video because, even though I'm not a die-hard fan of them, I need to acknowledge their contributions to the community with reverence. The same goes with racing games. Cruising USA, Daytona USA, Outrun, Crazy Taxi, Initial D, please. The overabundance of joy I would get riding around a simulated city crashing into other cars and pedestrians was too much for a little kid me to handle. The arcade period of games helped game developers and publishers unleash their projects to a wide audience in a time before the internet revolutionized the industry forever.
Yo, one box could leave you messed up and fractured. Lock these uppercuts, they may need you captured. May the best fighter win and win again. Battle to the top until his life ends. But if his life ends and he starts to decay, may one of his street soldiers...
Arcade stores had such an overwhelmingly emphatic impact on me and in society. People from all walks of life would gather around their favorite games and compete with one another to see who had the better dominant strategy. When a player lost, they would learn from their mistakes. The better they got, the more recognition from others they would gain, and from that, a friendship or two would bloom. It's a beautiful dynamic that thankfully carried over to the modern gaming landscape. People connecting with one another and sharing memories while creating strong ties. It's a beautiful thing. Games don't have to be complex AAA budget mediums, filled with eccentric details and meaningful messaging to resonate with people. It can most definitely be a simplistic concept that catches your attention and motivates you to keep on playing. It can be a simple design that appeals to all. From that one simple design, a new idea can be born, and from that point on, it's only a matter to build upon that idea until it becomes something entirely different on its own. These games walked so they could run. They helped spark the imaginations of many of our favorite game developers for sure. They're a wonderful invention that should always be renowned for their phenomenal technical ingenuity. As I said in the beginning of this video games are much more than mere visual entertainment. They are your gateway into the world of creation and imagination. So go out there and show the world what you're capable of. Be humble, be great, and until next time.